Twilight Syndrome. I've previously taken you through the first two games in the series, the Twilight Syndrome duology. At the end of the second game, we learn that the trio's series of adventures have been partially orchestrated by some kind of entity, why they were brought here, and why Mika, the airhead of the trio, is the only one that remembers their old world and their past lives. Well, I suppose we'll have to dive in to find out. So sit back and relax and let me, for probably the first time in English, take you on a journey through Moonlight Syndrome. Following the incident where a lamp fell down in the gymnasium and injured a student, which was the incident that we investigated in Twilight Syndrome Kiyomi Hen, the gymnasium is torn down, but something happens and construction is halted. Later at school, Yukari wonders where Mika is, and then Chisato tells her that Arisa wants to see her. Yukari asks what's up and what Mika has gotten herself into this time, and Arisa says that she's missing, and she tells Yukari about how they were on the train together and then she vanished. Yukari tries calling Mika's cell phone, but as she does, a robot voice on the other end tells her that the number is unavailable. Yukari then tries her home number, but it goes straight to the answering machine, and a recording of Mika's mother lets Yukari know that they will be overseas until the 30th. This confuses Yukari, because if Mika was with them, then surely they would all know about it, because she would have bragged about going overseas for months. Arisa and Yukari update Chisato on their findings, and she asks if she could have run away from home, and if that's why she's been acting so weird lately. Arisa says that she hasn't noticed anything, and Yukari wonders if she's just gotten herself into trouble again. They figure out that the best place to figure out where she is right here at school, and they begin asking people she knows if she's been here. Kazuki tells them that she was supposed to go to a training camp for something, but that she should have been back by now, and that she hasn't seen her since the day that she was supposed to leave for that. They're all afraid that she might have gotten into a traffic accident on the way there, or have been kidnapped, but they don't want to make asses of themselves, and they're not sure if any adults will take them seriously if they try and get them to search for her, so all of the girls split up and start combing all the rooms in the school where Mika frequents. And in her locker at the lacrosse club room, they find her training uniform and lacrosse racket, which would be items that she would have taken with her to that camp. They learn from one of her classmates that she wanted to break into modeling and maybe also be an idol. And Yukari begins to question if she really knew Mika all that well, because she didn't know about any of this, or that she was trying to save up for cosmetic surgery. While they're in her homeroom asking around, they take a look at her school desk and they find her diary. It's light on any personal musings, but it does contain a list of dates and where she was going on those dates. The list of dates doesn't really quite reveal much, except that she was indeed going to that lacrosse camp, and that Clock Tower 3 was supposed to release sometime later this year, and the third weird date, which is a date but it's also the number of the station that she disappeared from, which is weird. Yukari doesn't know the station and Arisa isn't here to recognize the name, so the search for answers continue. They overhear a rumor that the reason that the construction of the new gymnasium was being halted earlier was because when they were tearing down the old one, there was a student inside it still, and they were crushed to death. Yukari is sure that the school is keeping tight-lipped about the accident until they can inform all of the relevant parties before making an official announcement, but she has to know, and she goes to confront one of the older teachers who she knows will spill the beans. On the way to his office, they run into a creepy man who recognizes Yukari, and he lets her know that he is Aramata, and after asking him if he's seen Mika, which he has not, and insulting him to his face and calling him a pervert, She records her progress and then continues on. They make it to the old teacher's office and he immediately spills the beans and confirms that someone did die, but that it wasn't Mika. It was Miki. What's interesting about this is that the guy that's now spilling the beans is also the guy we saw earlier in the story, acting a little bit weird and acting a little bit stressed and confused and pacing around. And time during this story does seem a bit wonky, doesn't it? So I wonder if the reason that he was pacing around back and forth and acting shifty was because the thing that just happened had already happened back then, but is also somehow happening now. As dusk settles, Arisa calls Yukari. She's at Mika's house and she lets Yukari know that there is no one here and that she hasn't been here for a while as the mail and newspapers are piling up outside the door. Yukari updates Arisa on what they've found, including that Miki has died. After school is over, Kazuki and her friends are waiting at the bus stop, but Kazuki realizes that she's left her bag at school and tells her friends to go on without her, and that she's gonna run back and get it and meet up with them at the Chinese place they all agreed to go to. She finds her bag and decides to pack a few school papers that she needs for homework, and then Mika shows up. Although it's probably not Mika, because this wouldn't be the first time that someone doppelganger has showed up to cause havoc, which probably means that Yayoi is near. Yukari shows up to school the next day, excited to continue the search for Mika, but when she walks into her classroom to talk to Chisato about it, Chisato is more mum than usual, and she lets her know that Kazuki, she fell out of a window last night, and she's dead. But Chisato thinks that something is wrong. Something not quite normal is at work, and she's right. Later on, when Yukari is talking to Arisa about it, Arisa lets her know that someone from the school's astronomy club saw Mika at school late last night, and so Arisa and Yukari make their way there to ask some questions and hopefully get some answers. The astronomer that saw her, Mizuki, confirms that she did indeed see her at school late last night, and that she has no idea why she would be here either because she's Mika, but that it was definitely her that she saw, and that she recognized her immediately because she was wearing that backpack she always wears. Yukari and Arisa ask her if she saw what happened last night with Kazuki, but she says that she didn't, and that the cops ask the same question. She was looking up at the lunar eclipse when Kazuki died, so she didn't see anything. Outside, Arisa says the whole thing seems off. It makes no sense that Mika hasn't been to school in a week, but also not home in at least a week, but also that she lurks around school after hours. But before they can snoop around where Mika was allegedly seen, a teacher yells at them to go home because it's after hours, and that because of Miki's death, no one is allowed to roam around the school after last bell. The next day, Yukari looks for Arisa in her classroom, but one of Arisa's classmates says that she already left to go talk to Mizuki to ask her more questions, so Yukari makes her way to the observatory. Yukari enters the observatory, but it's empty. She looks around and she sees a substance of something pooling up on the floor, and then she looks up. And she sees the corpse of Mizuki, crushed in the telescope. She runs outside and starts looking for Arisa, fearing that something awful could have happened to her. Yukari finds Arisa and asks her where the hell she's been, and she says that she went to look for Mizuki but couldn't find her, and then she went up to the roof and ate ramen and then fell asleep, and that she's been asleep until now. I guess she missed the giant blood spatter on the floor. She's filled in on the details by Yukari, and she's of course horrified. 2 weeks pass and still there's no sign of Mika, and in the meantime more and more people have gone missing, all people that Mika were friends with. and those that haven't gone missing are too afraid to help find her or even talk about her. One of them, Miho, is home alone when she gets a call. She answers and it's Fumiko's mother, another one of Mika's friends. Her mother asks if she's at Miho's place and Miho says that she isn't. And her mother asks where Miho thinks that she could be, because it's after midnight now and she's getting worried. Fumiko would never stay out this late. Miho tells her that she's gonna try and find her and to hang tight and not call the police just yet. She calls Arisa and asks if she can help her find Fumiko, and Arisa agrees and calls up Yukari and Chisato to come help her. Arisa, Yukari and Chisato show up at the school after hours, and Arisa fills them in on the details and asks if they're cool with doing this, and Yukari says of course they are. They figure out that Miho already went in without them, so they head into the school to find her and hopefully also Fumiko.
And here you might have caught on to a bit of a visual versus audio discrepancy. There are quite a few instances around this part of the game that don't make a whole ton of sense. After Mika disappears, we see these cameras spying on the other protagonists. I don't know why. It's never quite answered. It gets hinted at later. And this is one of those infamous examples where Moonlight Syndrome is kind of like a shitty game, because it has bits like this where it uses the camera in the plot, but it never actually properly explains the camera at all and what it does until way later, when it's not relevant to the plot what the camera is and who's involved with the camera. So what we see here, what we just saw, we see the camera sort of spying on Fumiko, having Fumiko's mother and Miho, right, having a conversation. It is unclear, because we have seen other NPCs in the game pretend to be other characters, right? It's unclear if the camera person, if the person that's in the camera station, whatever thing that's surveilling the young people, it's unknown if they are pretending to be Fumiko's mother to lure Miho into the school. And I'm just gonna say a little bit of a spoiler alert here. The game never answers that question. We never find out. Like, we're gonna find Miho, we're gonna sort of find out what happened to Fumiko, but like, here's the thing, we're never gonna know. We'll never get told if the voice that we heard actually belongs to Fumiko's mother, or if it belongs to the person that's in the camera observatory room. We will also see the camera observatory room, but we will also get no fucking answers to like how it connects to the plot of anything. That might make sense when we look at like the big picture of this, the definitive version of this video, where we include all the bits of content that were left out of the original release of the game. I don't know yet, but we'll see. So, when things don't make sense for the next 1.5 chapters, just know that it's not because I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot for a lot of other reasons, but when it comes to this stuff, it's not because I missed it. It's because it doesn't make sense to go over necessarily until later. So, back to our programming.
Yukari, Arisa and Chisato sneak in, and while they're investigating the locker room, they hear someone coming, and they hear that it's not the footsteps of a small girl, so they hide, and it turns out they were right, as the school's night watchman walks by. Chisato asks if Miho told her anything about Fumiko's disappearance, and she says that she didn't. Yukari and Chisato agrees that it has to do something with Mika's disappearance, and that Kazuki's death is related to all of it as well, and they begin wondering if it's the school itself that's doing all of this. They decide to split up to cover more ground and hopefully find Miho and Fumiko faster. Yukari sweeps the floor that she was supposed to sweep for clues, and then she calls Arisa, who has kind of panicked a little bit, and Yukari yells at her to do her part and sweep the floor for clues. As she hangs up, Chisato calls and lets her know that she's been everywhere and that there are no clues. Chisato asks what teacher is on night watch, and Yukari says it's Hirose, the guy that we met a few times. And Chisato asks if he wasn't also the teacher that was on night watch when Kazuki died, and Yukari confirms that he was. That's very suspicious, and they agree to regroup, and they all begin making their separate ways to the floor of the school where Arisa is. Meanwhile, Arisa finally musters up the courage to look around the rooms that she's supposed to look around in, and she suddenly gets a feeling that someone is watching her. She enters a classroom and sees Miho on the floor and Hirose standing over her. He calmly tells her to call an ambulance, and Arisa says, sure. And then Hirose asks what she's doing here, and she says that she's just randomly here. He begins stumbling towards her and stutters that it wasn't him and that he found her like this. A policeman then bursts into the door. It's the guy they saw in the basement who they thought was the night watchman earlier. The teacher pleads with him not to kill him, and then the night watchman / policeman just shoots him in the chest. Yukari and Chisato show up, and while the policeman just stands there and looks at the scene of the dead teacher, the unconscious Miho, and the crying Arisa, Chisato checks the room and sees that Hirose kept an outfit in his closet that is like a Mika cosplay, and she wonders if he's the one that's been spotted walking around the school at night. With the mystery seemingly solved, the girls leave, but outside the school gates, Yukari and Chisato begin talking, and they think the policeman showing up when he did was a little too convenient, and they begin making their way back to the school without Arisa to just have a final look around. Inside the teacher's lounge, they find a massive marble pillar, and when they look up, they see that it stretches all the way to the headmaster's office, and they head up there to see if it stretches even further. His office was locked before, but it's now open, and inside they find a switch on the marble pillar, and they can hear an elevator mumble and grumble, and then a secret door in the pillar opens. They hesitate, stepping inside for a moment, but decide what the hell, they've come this far, and step inside and take the elevator up to a floor that's not on the school's blueprint. It's a massive room full of monitors, and they wonder if Hirose has been using them to spy on people. On a console, they find a clipboard full of numbers. It's a list of all the girls in Mika's class, and the body measurements. What the fuck? Yukari and Chisato make their way back to the elevator, and they see that it can take them all the way into a sub-basement that's not on the map either, and they go there. The sub-basement seems to be a laboratory of some kind, and it smells like chemicals, and in a locker they find a series of samples labeled girls' names, and one of them belongs to Miki. They can't quite make up what the samples are, but as Yukari is looking around, Chisato screams and tells her to look. She does, and it's some kind of fucked up Frankenstein girl sewed together from what seems like dozens of students, probably the ones that have gone missing. But the head though? The head belongs to the girl that set herself and Sumio on fire in the beginning. Was Hirose trying to put her together? Neither Yukari and Chisato wanted to know. They just want to leave, and they take the elevator up to the headmaster's office and try and exit through the door, but it's locked, and then a voice starts speaking to them over the speaker system. It's the fucking headmaster. He says they shouldn't be here and tells them to not be afraid. They yell at him that he's a murderer, and he says that there's been a terrible misunderstanding, and asks what they're doing here at this hour, and says that their parents must be sick with worry, and that they're gonna get him in big trouble with the Parents Association. He then appears from the elevator and asks them if his collection isn't impressive, and then again reassures them that they have nothing to worry about. He will set their souls free from the constraints of their wretched bodies. They will be part of his artwork and be born again as part of his masterpiece. He then slowly begins walking towards them with a knife while he groans and moans. Yukari and Chisato try and get the door that exits the room open, but it just won't budge. and they then turn around to face their destiny. And then the building collapses and the headmaster falls to his death.